The art of allowing someone to be who they are and respect that level is a huge part of self-love and self-development and self-growth. You get yourself in trouble when you start trying to convince people and shift their perspective to make you more comfortable. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to episode 54 of the Positivity Experience. Stop trying to change everybody. Check it out. Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 54 of the Positivity Experience. I am your girl Lori, and I'm coming to you with some serious gratitude today. You guys have been tuning in from all over the world, and I just want to thank you guys so much. And you guys are killing the game. You guys are sending me emails and text messages and TikTok messages and Snapchats and every possible way to contact me and telling me about all the things that we're talking about here or in any of my other social platforms, my YouTubes and all of those things, TikTok, on how you're implementing these things and how you're really starting to do them and you're really starting to grasp onto them. And I got to tell you, I am so freaking proud of you. Now, if you're listening and you're like, okay, I just haven't really started because I'm a little like, I don't know where to begin. Okay, you're fine. You're fine. You're here now. You're tuned in. That's great. I'm here for it. And I love you guys. So let's keep the momentum, right? And one thing that holds people back, and again, it's living in your ego, honestly, right, is the need to change someone's perspective to make you happy or for them to understand your perspective. And this is really important to discuss because so much of you being stuck is, there's a multitude of things, but this is definitely one of them, right? Is accepting that, number one, people do not have to change for you, nor should they. Okay. Now, when I talk about that, I'm going to explain. What is not good is for you to say things like, you and your partner are in a bad headspace, not sure if you're going to stay together. Don't even think that the marriage is going to work or the relationship's going to work. Okay. And let's say you were going to call me. Let's say you're already a client of mine. And you say, you know what, I think it's time for me to bring my partner into this. It's time for us to chat about it. And so then you message me later and you say, hey, I went ahead and I booked online a session for my partner to talk to you separately, right? And I'm like, oh, good. Okay. Well, how did they feel about that? And they're like, well, they don't really want to do it, but I told them, okay, I'm already going to cancel that and I'm going to refund your deposit because I will not talk to someone who's coming to me begrudgingly or coming to me to make you feel better. I won't do it because it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of their time. And it's not something that I'm going to do. Okay. And that's just how I stand on it. Because if you're forcing someone to go to therapy, or if you're, if they're trying to manipulate you because they're like, we can go to therapy and they're trying to use things or life coaching together. And okay, if they're doing that, again, I'm not doing it. You can find somebody else, but I'm not going to do it because they're begrudgingly going and it's not going to be effective. Just like if a couple comes to me, it's not going to be, well, they're wrong for this and this person's wrong for that. Absolutely not. Because a person has a right to have the feeling or the viewpoint in which they have. Because remember, thoughts and feelings are not facts, but they're perceptions to the person who's having them. So just because you align with something does not mean that the other person has to, or that the other person even has to understand your perspective. They do not owe that to you. Okay. So let's say you have a sibling and your sibling is just, living their best life, but their best life does not align with you because let's say they're out partying. They're still working, they're still doing those things, but you're just not really vibing with their lifestyle. It's not for you to vibe with. Who cares if you're vibing with it? You don't have to vibe with it. That's not your life. And if you're judging, and this is a fact, if you judge another human being and you criticize another human being, you're not good with yourself. And that's a fact. That is a fact. People who are truly in touch with themselves, they are grounded. They are at one with whatever your higher power is that you believe. They are good with releasing the negativity and, processing your anger when it comes, because inadvertently we're humans. We're going to have those shitty days. You get it. You feel it. You observe it. You release it. Somebody else is doing something that doesn't align with you. It's literally okay for you to keep it moving. Okay. And your ego tells you that you have to step in and you want to change them and you want them to do better. And this is where parents have a hard time, especially when kids get older, and I mean older, like adults, where You're like, but I don't understand. You don't have to. That's a bitter pill for you to swallow, but you better swallow it if in fact you're looking for that internal growth. Because human beings are not put here for you to shift and form into clay to make them molded to you. One person does not complete another human being. They can bring the icing to the cake, but they are not going to make you internally happy. And if you're thinking that they are, we got to restructure that frame of thought. Your frame of thought is not, no, we're not going to do that. Now, this is where, for my people pleasers, this segment right here is for you. If you are trying to change yourself and trying to make sure everyone around you is happy and not conflicted and everybody is good and all of these things are happening, no, absolutely not. We are stopping that today. The second you're listening to this at 5 minutes and 54 seconds into the podcast, it's going to have to end. You know what I mean? Now, of course, it's not going to be an overnight thing, right? Because you've been here. It's a habit. It's an automatic habit. So now we have to change what the automatic habit is. And when you're sitting in that space of habit, you are just trying so hard to make sure that people like you or they love you, which, by the way, is a trauma response. Because you don't have to apologize for being you. You don't ever water yourself down. Stop trying to fit in. What are you trying to fit into? You trying to fit into a box? Trying to fit what are you trying to fit into? And stop. Okay? Trying to constantly be in a space of fitting in is never going to serve your best and highest good. You want to tap into who you are. You want to be unique. You want to be a little extra. You want to be a little freaky. You want to be a little whatever you are, be that. Because if you do good, people are going to talk. If you do bad, people are going to talk. So do you and let them talk anyway. And when you're trying to change that perspective of you for somebody else, that's a problem. Because if someone is not willing, or they are just really hell-bent determined that they just don't like you, or they think you're completely wrong with something, your parenting is wrong, the way you drink is wrong, like everything is just wrong, okay? That is not your issue. And I don't care if you write it down in the Holy Grail and it is written there for everybody to see and it is a fact-based thing in a fact-based book. A person who is not willing to see past their own perception will never, ever be able to hear or shift their thought because they're not willing to do so. And you don't get to say, well, I don't know why they're not. Well, you don't need to know their why. You just need to be able to understand. Let people have the narrative in which they carry, because no matter how hard you try, some people are just not going to see it from your perspective, right? Which is why, let's say I'm doing public speaking and I'm out doing public speaking somewhere, I'm going to make sure that it's somewhere that like I know that people want to be there. So let's say it's going to be, you have me come into a company and I'm doing a public speaking and okay, people are there because that's what they're doing, right? Or if I'm at a summit or at a VidCon or something, people are there because they choose to be there. So they're going to be open-minded to hear things and listen. And which is why you see people in protest or things like that. You're going to see a bunch of people come together collectively because they all have that same thought base, which is why, like minds attract like minds, right? And your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you're constantly sitting in people-pleasing state, you don't even have a vibe. You don't even have a vibe to attract anybody. You don't even know your vibe. Because when you're people pleasing, you're constantly in a state of trying to fit into somebody else's vibe so they like you. Why are you so worried about other people liking you? I mean, of course, nobody's in the habit of wanting people to be like, oh my God, I hate you. Oh my God, you're terrible. Of course, nobody's in that business of doing that. But however, you have to be true to you. And you're not going to please everybody. Nobody in the world everybody in the world is not going to like you. They're not going to like me. They're not going to like you. They're not going to vibe with. That's fine. Don't lose sleep over that. That's called being humans. Welcome to the world of humanity, because we are all unique individuals and we have different belief systems. Where you get yourself in trouble is where you keep trying to shift it. Let's say you're in a relationship. Let's say it's not a partnership. It's a friendship. and you've been friends with somebody for a while, you grew up together, things are you're really rocking, but you guys kind of see things differently politically, differently religiously, differently ways of life, differently with children. It doesn't matter, but you're still cool. Like, you guys haven't really like judged each other. You're there. You don't have to necessarily like how they're vibing. You're not really calling them every day, but when you guys get together, you guys are seriously like, you pick up right where you left off. You love each other. You respect each other. That is friendship. You don't have to align with somebody else's stuff, right? And it's not really negative. It's just something that you don't align with. Now, if it gets really bad, right? If it's something, there's certain things that you have to define as your non-negotiables, right? Non-negotiables doesn't mean you change someone or that you even judge them. You just distance yourself. So for me, I mean, you can't be racist, because I can't vibe with that on a level of friendship, of personal relationship, right? I just can't. Or if you're, really stressed about like homosexuality and all this stuff, again, I can't be solid with you. I'm not going to judge you, because maybe that's all you've known, but you don't want to see anything else outside of that. And that's you, and that's okay. There's zero judgment there. See, that's the difference. You can have differences without judgment. Okay. All you can do, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make the damn horse drink, unless you're going to drown the horse by shoving the horse's face in the water. Well, that's not going to serve a purpose anyway. And you have to be careful how you're sharing your perspective. Because if you start getting to on your soapbox, like holier than thou, and you start explaining to everybody why they're doing everything else wrong, definitely no one's going to hear you. Because now all it is all they hear out of your mouth is judgment and how bad they are for doing the things in which they're doing or the choices in which they're making. Vice versa. Let's say you have somebody in your family, and I don't know, you're really trying to figure it out. Now you have an OnlyFans page, and you're killing the game. You're making money hand over fist. Okay. And I don't know, your sister or your mom or somebody finds out about it, and they don't like it. They don't have to like it. They're allowed their feelings, by the way. They're allowed to be like, I can't believe you, or whatever it is that they're caught up on. They are allowed that. See, I think that that's where people get caught up, is you forget that people are allowed to have their feelings. They're allowed to have their feelings, and they're allowed to not have to shift them for you or you for them. But until you can accept this fact, because that's your ego telling you that you can't. Until you can accept that, you will stay stuck, because you'll constantly be staying in a place of trying to change people, or you trying to fit into their box, or you doing things out of obligation. You never make a commitment out of obligation. I feel obligated. Don't do it. Do not make a commitment out of obligation, right? So going back into the perspectives, right? And you trying to change people, you have to realize that no matter how much you want to, and let's say somebody does change for you. Let's say somebody does give up sports or let's say somebody does change. Okay. I promise you that is not going to be as fulfilling as you think it is. Sure, they might quote unquote fall in line to make you more comfortable. At some point, they will resent you. Fact. At some point, they will resent you, or they'll be so beaten down because they have nothing else to do but just be like, okay, well, I don't even know who I am anymore. You took my light away. And why would you want to do that? Why would you want to take somebody's light away? I mean, I know a lot of you know with Paul, my husband, he's a big golfer, right? That's his pastime. Golfing, basketball, things like that. Outside of the house, of course. So every summer, I mean, he's pretty much golfing 90% of the week when he's done work, and on the weekends. Great. I know it makes him happy. It makes him good. I'm good. I like to go bike riding. I like to go hiking in the summer, anything like that. Hang out with my friends, sit in my pool. We're good. I don't need you up on me 24/7 to know that our relationship is good, because I'm good with me. Okay. So, and I say this because it was funny. My sister Dee, years and years and years ago, had said something about, oh, wow, he golfs a lot. Like, I don't know if I'd want him golfing like the whole weekend and all that stuff. I mean, wow, that's a lot. And I said, well, no, it's a lot for you. That's you projecting onto me. Because see, people will do that. They will make their projections of how they think your relationship or your life should be based on how they feel. right? And you got to check yourself on that too. Just because you know how you might feel if somebody's husband, say, golfed like my husband did, and maybe some of you are like, yeah, I definitely couldn't rock with that. That's good because at least you know that. But for me, I'm really self-secure now within myself. Our relationship did not start off that way. Remember, I was still healing and I was going through a lot of insecurity. I'm super secure now. I mean, I travel doing speaking and sometimes touring when I can without him. Like I meet a lot of people, and I mean, these are all important factors for you. Okay. You have to understand that you don't need someone attached to your hip. Someone is not your pet. Humans are not meant to be owned. Period. You don't own someone when you're married to them. You don't own someone when you're in a relationship. You don't own a friend. You don't own your friends. They're allowed to have friends outside of you. They're allowed to do things and not invite you. They are allowed that. If you feel FOMO, fear of missing out, if you fear FOMO by not being invited, that's not a them issue. It's not their job to make you feel comfortable because you're not invited. No one needs to walk on eggshells around you. And you don't need to walk on eggshells around other people. And if you are walking on eggshells, you cannot change the person, but you can change the role in which they play in your life. Now you have to start making decisions. And this is where your big resistance comes. Okay. You can know all of the other stuff. You can say, okay, well, maybe okay, that's not too bad. We're going to up it. And this is where a lot of people are going to struggle, but we'll get through it if you want to get through it. You have to realize that when you are trying to change someone and you're really holding on to them and you really don't want to let them go, that's the problem. Is you're refusing, you think that you have control over them being in your life, and you really don't. Somebody could walk out your life right now. They legit could. You don't own a human being. And they don't owe you anything like that, right? So if you're going into that relationship and you are saying to yourself, okay, I need to be secure. You need to tell me you love me. I need to make sure that you're home. You need to text me. Okay, that is an issue. That is an issue. We need to address that. Links are in my bio. My show notes on here in the description. You need to book a session because we need to get down and dirty as to why you are holding on to somebody so hard. And why you're trying to change them to make you comfortable. And this is where the respect of another human being comes into play. Okay? There are so many things in this world that don't align with me. There are so many people that do things that do not align with me. I don't judge them. That's them. That's a them thing. That's a them thing. I can only focus on me. Now, let's say you take that a little bit more globally, right? Let's say you say voting, because if you're in the US, and I'm sure in any other country, by the way, but if you're in the US, like it's been crazy the last, 4 or 5 years. So here we go. So here we go into voting. People have divided up families. They've broken up, which, by the way, if certain topics become a hot button for you that are non-negotiables, then yes, you need to separate. But you don't get to judge someone because they're doing something different than you, but you distance yourself. Okay. Like I said, my non-negotiables, racism. Sorry, I can't get down with that. My sister Joanne, my one sister who's left alive, she's 73. She'll be 74 and I'll be 51 in April. We're like 5 days apart and many years. But, me and her do not talk politics. She's on one side of the fence. I'm on a different side of the fence. She is older. She held a card for the KKK at one point. And years ago, this is not like 5 minutes ago. This was like 60s. Okay. 60s, 70s. And, she is from a space where it's kind of what she knew, but then she doesn't really want to see anything different, but then she likes my husband and she's selective with it. And I think, that's where, we just don't really vibe that way. We don't hate each other. I asked her for my grandmother's, goulash recipe. She sent it to me. She told me she was getting her teeth done. We keep our relationship extremely high level. I don't go down to visit her because, no, she said something like, well, there's a lot of people like you down here now. A lot of people like me. Amazing. Like, was it? No, like people who are like, married to Black people. And again, she doesn't realize she's being racist, but she's racist, but she will tell you she's not racist. And so for me, I'm not going to judge that. I'm not going to try to convince her and change her. I mean, trust me, if she wanted to, we could have a conversation. I could tell her, talk to her about it. We could say, and again, she's not a bad human. She's just very limited in her belief system. And in her belief system, right? Because she's been, her daughter has 4 biracial children. She loves her grandkids. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think she thinks she's racist because she'll say things that are racist, but then she doesn't mean I'm racist. I mean, it's not making excuses for her because we don't really rock like that, right? Because I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm just uncomfortable. And I wouldn't want to put her in that situation, right? Because that's the person that I am. And she's my only living sibling and like family member that I know alive. Like mom, dad have gone, Jack D have gone, and she's 70, almost 4, right? So again, you have to know where somebody is and then understand what it is that you will accept. And just because they're family members, like, people would say, oh, well, that's your only sister. Okay. What's that mean? I got to settle for something, or I got to make her settle for something. I'm not in the business of doing that. And I'm good with that. And so when there's the people around you who really want to push their agenda, and I will say that is one thing about her though, like, she knows where I stand. I know where she stands, and neither one of us try to push the narrative. And we're on opposite sides of the coin when it comes to politics, but we don't talk about politics because I'm not going to convince her and she's not going to convince me. And we respect that out of each other. Okay. I think that's the Croatian in us or something, but it is true. You have to realize there will be people in your life and sometimes your family who you don't vibe with. If they try to push their narrative, you got to distance yourself. You got to say, bye-bye person. Like, this is not healthy for me. And in turn, it's not going to be healthy for you, because you do have to realize this. And this is where I think people don't understand. If someone feels toxic to you, there's a good chance you feel toxic to them. Okay. So, and you could say, but I'm not toxic, but they could say they're not toxic. So you have to be really willing to distance yourself. When it comes to changing people, you got to be able to distance yourself. The thing that you stick on is that you need someone to do it the way you would do it. That's expecting you out of people. Well, I would call and check on them if they were sick, or, I would do this if that were me. Okay. But that's not you. They're not you. And again, just because somebody doesn't show love or show caring the way you think they should, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't care. I mean, of course, there's various levels, right? This isn't just a blanket statement where it's like, well, if somebody cheats on you, again, though, cheating isn't even about sex, even though sex is there, but it really isn't about sex. It's always a deeper issue there. Always. It's not just, I had it could be a couple of drinks in, but I'm saying there's always a contributing factor. There's always something that they're missing, maybe not in the marriage or the relationship, but they're missing it within themselves, which is why you got to be careful when you start taking people's unfaithfulness to heart and think that it's a you problem. I mean, you do have to check yourself. Were you trying to own somebody? Were you cutting on them off for their friends? And did they just say, yeah, I'll do this, and then they just lost their mind and just went out and found somebody? That does happen. Okay. So again, that's why I'm saying you got to be careful when you're trying to control people. And controlling people and trying to change people is you don't change their hobbies. You don't get to change them. Because remember, the same thing you like about somebody in the beginning, you can't let that be the same thing you hate about them. You don't get to say, I love my partner so much. You're talking to one of your girlfriends or your guy friends and you're like, oh my God, I love them so much. They are such a good worker. They work so hard, 8 hours a week. They're really pulling it down. Well, you don't get to complain about that 2 years later and be like, they're never home. They work all the time. You knew that. What do you, wait, you want them to change because you had a baby? They don't have to do that. So this is why communication, it has to be your key. You have got to communicate. You got to communicate your boundaries. You got to communicate your desires. And you also have to be able to hear what the other person needs for their own personal health, mental health. Like, again, with my husband, it's golfing, or going down to the bar a couple times with, sometimes in the week, going down the tiki bar, having a couple drinks, like going out with his buddies. Like this makes him feel good. This makes him a better person for me at home. I do not want to prop him up here and stare at him and have him upstairs with me. And then we can't stand the sight of each other because he's salty with me because he's not hanging out with the friends. And I'm salty with him because he's not more interactive with me. See, you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to try to change people and control them and then get pissed when they don't respond lovingly. Well, if you're trying to control me, I'm not going to be so sure. But that's where the problem comes in when you're dealing with narcissism and narcissists, because they know how to break that down to where you feel like unable to function without them, or nobody would like you except for them. I mean, and we'll do a whole different topic on that, and it might be in my Patreon at some point. I won't have my Patreon up, but I am going to do that. But yeah, so I mean, I am going to do some exclusives just for the Patreon when I launch it, just because it's really going to help me offset some of these expenses. But it's not up right now. But ideally, you have to understand the biggest thing isn't about what somebody's actions are and what somebody is doing and what somebody is saying, but it's about you. This is about you accepting that people are allowed to have a different viewpoint than you. Yep. They are allowed to never want to know your perspective. Yep, they are allowed that. Now, for me and with my clients, you always, if you're working with me, you always have to be in a state of being open. I mean, one of the beautifulest things that I have by working with people all over the world, right, is learning different cultures, different religions, different ways of life. I love it because it's maybe different than how I function or different in what I believe in. And to see it and to appreciate it is amazing. Like, you don't get to go visit another country and critique them the entire time you're there. That's a you problem. Okay. You don't get to go to another country and then start complaining about the country. Like if you go to visit, like you don't get to visit and be like, well, this sucks. I don't understand. Oh my God, that's terrible. Well, okay, bye. You can go home. So you have to realize just because people do things differently and they believe spiritually differently or culturally differently, it doesn't mean that you have to vibe with it. And I think somehow or another that gets lost somewhere. You think that if you allow them, quote unquote, allow them to be them, that you're permissing that, like you're validating it. Like you're like, yeah, that's what I would do too. That's some weird false narrative that you have in your head. Because people are legit allowed to function how they function. Okay. So when you are sitting in that thought process and you're worried about other people, also check you and how you're responding to other people. Other people will inadvertently always try to push your boundaries, and they will always push expectations on you because that's what human nature does. I mean, until they're completely balanced and healed, then they don't do that shit because I'm not going to do it. Like, again, if I ask you to come over, you say no, that's fine. You don't have to tell me why. We're good. I mean, you're not coming over regardless, right? So the point of that is you have to get good with you. And a lot of times you're trying to get people to change, to see your perspective, to validate that your perspective is the right perspective. Or you're so into your own perspective that you can't see everybody else. You're not right, babe. You're not. You're right for you, but you're not right for them. Okay? You're right for you, but you're not right for them. And until you can start allowing humans to function the way they function, meet them where they are and know what works for you and what you're going to vibe with and know what you can't, and be okay. This is so important, this part. Be okay with releasing some of those people that you refuse to let go of. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the upcoming weeks on why you're struggling so much to release. Again, it's always going to come down to ego, and ego can be triggered from your trauma and living in the id and all those other places. But when it comes to change, now here's the homework, because I'm a homework girl. We're at 28 minutes. So if you're driving, it's literally like the end of the podcast. So here's what I want you to do for your homework. Okay. When you find yourself, this is going to take some self-awareness, but this is how we start to change. As you are dealing with your self-awareness and you feel yourself needing, even if you're watching news or you're on socials and you see an action or a caption of something that you don't agree with, or that doesn't feel good to you, and you start to feel yourself judgy, or feeling some kind of way, I need you to write it down. Don't process this in your head. It's not going to work. Write it down on paper and write down, okay, I don't like how blah, blah, blah does blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, I need you to analyze why. Well, because I don't like it. That's not why. Well, because that's not how I would do it. Again, not a why. I need you to go deeper as to why you struggle with accepting that that works for somebody else. Okay. And that's just a part to really work on. And then, obviously, if you ever wanted to do sessions with me, you'd go to my website, which is going to be right here in my speaking, right on this podcast in the show notes, as well as if you want to join, I'm going to start sending out a newsletter. And if you want to do that, you can go over to thepositivityexperience.com and you can, which is also in the notes, but you can get on the blog list. And then this way I can add you in on that. So anything new coming up or when the book releases and, little exercises, it just seems like something fun that I want to do to just kind of really connect and engage more with the community. But yeah, so that's all in the notes. But yeah, so in closing of this, remember this. Just because somebody does something different and they respond differently doesn't mean that they're wrong. For them, it may work. And accepting this part right here, that if it does not serve you, and by the way, there will be things, many things that will not serve you and that you will not align with, you have to be okay with releasing them. You have to be okay with it. Okay, you can't be like, well, I don't understand why they wouldn't just, you don't have to. So check yourself really good, get really comfortable, and realize the more you judge, the less you feel good about you. Full on internal love. Not, well, my way is the right way. Yeah, that's still rooted in insecurity, right? If you say my way is the right way, that's rooted in insecurity and traumas and control and ego. Okay, so that's some homework for you. Like I said, visit the show notes if you want to get on like the mailing list. Eventually, in the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna have the Patreon up so you can get the bonus episodes. So there'll be like 2 episodes a week kind of thing. I mean, a week. It's not gonna be a weekly thing. It's gonna be like once a month. So 1 week you'll have a whole extra bonus episode. So, but I love you guys so much. And just remember, all of the energy that you're putting trying to change other people or change for other people is energy that you could be focusing on you. You must, today, tomorrow, and always, be your first and best priority. Check it out.